Hi everyone, welcome to Everyday, your daily stop of virtual reality content. My name is Dee, and today we are visiting the demo that started them all. That's right, Tuscany. Tuscany is a demo created and distributed by Oculus VR themselves. It was one of the first that was ever made available for the platform. It's pretty much just a small house surrounded by a yard in front of the ocean. And it's a great demo for demonstrating the capabilities of the platform. It has a lot of hotkeys and functionality that let you explore various different features of the device. I actually featured Tuscany in my very first video ever on this channel. That was a long time ago, last December. And now I'm going to be featuring it again on the Oculus Rift Development Kit 2. And we're going to look at the improvement, and we're going to go through all the features that are available. Although this was the first demo made available and it's good for demonstrating the platform, it's not necessarily the best demo for beginners. I mean, it's nice in that there's no like goals, there's no complicated controls to learn, but on the other hand, it does involve locomotion, and the locomotion is not super optimized for a comfortable experience. So there are other demos that might be a little bit better for a new user. For example, the recent demo Sightline the Chair, which just has the user sitting in one place with no locomotion. Der große Gottlieb is another one with no locomotion that might be better for beginners. And people are making more demos now that are appropriate for beginners. So before we start, I need to clarify that there are two versions of the Tuscany demo, and they are pretty different, even though they both use the same models and graphical assets. So one of them is distributed with the official Oculus SDK, and it's called Oculus World Demo. It's written entirely in C++ against the C++ SDK, and it has a lot of features and hotkeys for exploring the various capabilities of the platform, because that's really what it's designed for. And that version, it doesn't have any animations, it doesn't have any audio at all. Whereas the other version is the Unity version of Tuscany. The Unity version of Tuscany is built using the Unity Game Development SDK, or Game Development Kit. And so you need a license for Unity in order to use that version. But a lot of the demos for the Oculus Rift are built in Unity, and they often use this as a reference and a starting point. And because Unity makes it a lot easier to develop advanced features, they include things like animations, like particle effects, like positional audio, and they just throw in all that stuff, and it makes it a much richer experience. But there's also a lot less platform demonstrating like hotkeys and features like that to really explore all the detailed features of the platform. So I'm going to actually start with the Unity version of Tuscany, and I'm going to go through the various things that it has over the other version and show you all of its hotkeys. That won't take very long. And then we're going to jump over into Oculus World Demo, the C++ version of Tuscany. Without further ado, let's go. All right, here we are in Unity Tuscany. Unity Tuscany is a very lively place. You can see those blue butterflies flapping around, all these little pieces of cotton flying through the air. And one thing I noticed right away in Unity Tuscany is when I follow a piece of cotton or a butterfly with my eye, like that butterfly there, I'm just watching it, moving my head to track it, it is a much smoother experience than it was in DK1, because when I tried to track something with my head in DK1, it would blur as I moved my head. But I don't have that issue in DK2. Also, just the contrast is greatly enhanced. Everything looks way more vivid. You have, like, that tree looks solid black in the dark portions, and you don't have that grayness that you have with DK1. So it's a great improvement over DK1, as well as the resolution is just immediately better. Being able to see the details on those window grates, to see the details on the tree leaves, to look in the distance and see those towers and things like that. And just to be able to see the little cotton things floating through the air, even when they're several feet away from me, and not to be just a few pixels, kind of just a couple pixels drifting through the air. It's much more detailed. So comparing this to DK1, it's a huge step up. Now, like I said, this has positional audio. So if I'm looking at this fountain here, it's making a watery sound. If I look left, I now hear it out of my right ear. And now it's coming in front of me. And now it's on my left. And if I turn completely around, I can hear it's right behind me. So they do a good job of incorporating that, even though it's pretty basic, but it's important, and I think it's something that most VR demos need in some capacity. And that's not something the Oculus World demo version has. And the ground is, like, people have said that Tuscany really shows its age when you start to put it into DK2 because the quality is so much better in DK2. Like, this ground is obviously a single flat texture, and you can tell that right away, especially when you can, like, lean down and look at it closer, like that. And so they definitely could stand to do a second pass at making like a version of Tuscany with higher resolution textures, maybe a little more geometry. I actually get some kind of ridiculous frame rate when I play Tuscany with VSync off, like 400 frames a second. It's a very low poly world. This fire animation is also specific to Unity Tuscany. It's very cool. And you can see positional tracking is totally working. I can see that better if I go up to a window here. So I can be by the side of the window. I can look out the window. I could be like hiding here and someone could come up to the window. I'd be like, hi, I see you. Now I'm hiding. And you can lean out the window a little bit, get a better view of outside. I can, like that tree on the right, if I lean forward, I can see it, and the sunflowers. When I lean back, they are hidden. And if I lean back farther, even more stuff is hidden. So that's all working. And one thing I never liked about Tuscany, and a big part of why I think it's a bad demo for newbies, is because of the stair animation, the stair walking animation. It's like nothing at all like actually walking upstairs. You feel like you're just kind of like gliding, like you're an ice skater going across some kind of skating rink when you're going up and down the stairs. And that just feels really weird, and that's why a lot of people get uncomfortable with the stairs, especially if you go down them backwards. That's a good way to make yourself sick if you're new to the platform. Candles. So one thing in the original Tuscany, I would get up close to these candles and I would want to get a little bit closer to them, but their bounding box wouldn't let me. But now I can get as close as I want to them just by using my positional tracking. Alright, let's go to the balcony. What else is there to see here? So I can get a good view of these tree leaves and their details from the balcony here. A good view of the bay. The sailboat out there has a lot more detail. The birds, on the other hand, so you can see those birds flying by. Those birds still look like clusters of pixels kind of flickering to me. So for some reason, the bird animations are just not very good at this distance. I don't know why. But the sailboats actually look a lot nicer than they did in DK1. You can really see a lot more detail on them. Anyway, now that we're up here, I think this is a good place to demonstrate some of the hotkeys in Tuscany. So, many people are not aware that the new Unity Tuscany demo actually includes VR Comfort Mode. VR Comfort Mode is something designed by Cloudhead Games to help address VR sickness in their titles, like the Gallery 6 Elements. And the way it works is right next to your W key, which pushes you forward. If you hit the Q or E keys, they will turn you left and right in increments, just like that. So if you just don't touch your mouse and you just navigate using the keyboard, so you can turn like this, then you can go forward, and you can, because you always move in the direction your head is pointed, you can use your head to navigate to some extent. And if you start to turn your head too far and you need to turn your body, you can use the Q and E keys for that. And you can see they do this instantaneous, like 30 or 60 degree turning. I'm not sure how far it is actually. 45? 45? Yeah, it's 45. And it's because you're only turning very briefly and very instantaneously, it helps to avoid a lot of the sickness you get with a gradual turn that can start. And the interesting thing with acceleration in the Rift is the acceleration doesn't line up with what your body is feeling. But if you can make it as short as possible, that really helps to reduce the possibility of sickness. So you feel briefly uncomfortable, but only for that very brief moment. So that's how VR Comfort Mode works. Moving on, if you hold down left shift, you can run. If you're more used to the Rift and you feel more comfortable moving around at higher speed, you can explore the environment faster by holding down Shift. And if you want to reset the level and start it all over again with your default settings, in case you've been playing with the settings, you just have to hit right Shift and then hit Enter. And now we are right back at the beginning, just like we started, everything reset. So there are a bunch of options. Not all of them seem to have any apparent effect to me. I think some of them are currently unimplemented, but I don't know which ones. Like there are options to disable yaw drift correction and things like that, which may or may not even be relevant for DK2. So I'm just going to show you some of the things that have a very clearly visible effect. So C turns on a mouse cursor, and this is useful for demoing. Like if you're watching somebody on your monitor while they are inside the Rift, you can be like, hey, go in that door. And they're like, okay, going in the door. Now go up those stairs. You'd be like, okay, fine. Now this does mean that you can't turn with the mouse. So you might need to rely on those VR comfort keys. If you push your mouse all the way to the edge, it still turns. But it can take a while to move your mouse all the way across there. Look at that candle. Look at that sailboat. Look at everything. So that's the mouse cursor. P turns prediction on and off. That doesn't have much of an effect for me, so I'm not going to show that one. R resets your tracker orientation. It's useful to press R once at the beginning, just to make sure everything's tracked correctly. Or if you change people while inside the application, R to reset is a good idea, because they might sit in the chair differently. They might be taller or shorter, things like that. Spacebar brings up this display. This shows you your frames per second. That's VSynced at 75 for me at the moment. It shows IPD. I have my IPD and eye height set to, I believe, set to the US male average, just so that most of you guys will not have trouble viewing this in your Rifts. Prediction sets how many milliseconds of prediction. That's supposed to be 30 milliseconds. And FOV is the field of view. I believe that's I want to say that's vertical field of view. It might be diagonal. I think it's vertical though. And that just says kind of how much field of view it's rendering on the screen, or how much it's rendering inside its render target, really, which is then being rendered to the screen. Resolution is an interesting one. I'm going to talk a lot more about this in Oculus World demo. Resolution is the resolution of the internal render target to which the game is actually rendering, and then that is turned into the two images that you see on the screen. So the left half of the render target is used to render the left eye view, the right half is used to render the right eye view, and this distortion where the outside it gets compressed, and that happens after it gets rendered to the render. So you can see the resolution of the render target, 2364 by 1461, is considerably higher than the resolution of the screen. It's about 30% higher in each direction. And the reason they do that is because when they apply the warping distortion or barrel distortion to bring it down to fit on the screen, that actually shrinks the image. So they have to start with a higher resolution image in order to do that. I'll show you more about that when I get to the Oculus World demo. So, a few more things. You can adjust your vertical field of view if you want by using the left and right brackets. This is actually something you cannot do in Oculus World demo. So you can see that my field of view is changing as I hit the left and right brackets. You have to hit it a lot of times to change it a lot. So I'm increasing it now. I'm actually going to reset to the beginning. So I'm going to increase, I'm hitting my right bracket over and over and over. You can see that I'm seeing more and more and more of the house and the scene as I continue to press the right bracket. And I'm going to keep on pressing it. So normally this is not something you would ever want to do in most circumstances, but it's interesting to see the effect of this. So now that I've increased my FOV all the way up to 130 degrees, if I look around, there's this really weird kind of, it's hard to describe. It's kind of like you're looking through binoculars backwards. So like there's this thing where the edges look all stretched out. So like if I put the door near the top of my vision, the door looks like it's stretched out and super tall, like I'm looking at a funhouse mirror at it. And the house, like when it's near the top, looks like it's getting super big. And the middle of my vision is the only part that doesn't look distorted. And conversely, if I use the left bracket, this goes into what I like to call binocular view. If I press my left bracket over and over and over and over really fast, you can see it's a bit subtle at first, but as you press it more and more, and your FOV continues to drop, you will start to feel more and more like you are looking at the scene through a pair of binoculars. And this is actually used by a few games. This is used by Half-Life 2 when you are looking around through your sniper rifles guide. It's used in the game Private Eye, which is done entirely from your apartment window using a pair of binoculars, which is a pretty cool concept. So, and I believe it's also as of the latest update of the Dolphin VR. It's also used in their version of Wind Waker when you're using the telescope. Okay, so now, it's so big. Now I'm at 45 degrees, and if I look around, I actually feel like I'm looking at this scene through a pair of binoculars. And if you look at these planters in particular, these pots, you'll notice that even though you know that they're round when viewed from above, when you view them through binoculars, there's this effect that's there's this perspective distortion effect that's sometimes called depth compression, where things that are normally kind of big and round seem to get flatter. And this same effect occurs in photography when you use a very long telephoto lens, like a 200mm lens or 300mm lens. And it just makes everything look flatter and closer together. So if I look over here, I can see those houses in the distance now much better because I'm looking at them through binoculars. And it looks like they're actually much closer. It looks like this wall and those houses are not that far apart. And likewise, it looks like the fountain and the tree are much closer together. So this is kind of the compression effect, the depth compression effect you get looking through binoculars. And you can reproduce that by decreasing your field of view inside the Rift. So I'm just going to reset that. And now we're back to normal. And you can see the town is now far away again. Alright. Is there anything else I want to cover here? Yes, there is. So, player movement speed. If you're not comfortable with the default movement speed in Tuscany, you can actually slow it down using your 7 key. So if I hit it a bunch of times, now I'm moving much slower. Very, very casual. This could be a nice relaxing stroll around the villa. And conversely, if I hit 8 a bunch of times, my walking speed just continues to increase as I hit 8. And if I continue to hit 8, hit it a few more times, eventually I get to where I'm like moving around the villa at like Quake 2 speeds. Just rushing around at like 10 or 20 miles an hour. So super fast all around the villa. And similarly, the 9 and 0 keys can be used to adjust your, essentially adjust your mouse sensitivity. So if I press 0 a bunch of times, now if I barely move my mouse at all, I turn super fast. And if I hit 9 a bunch of times, then I have to move my mouse farther to turn the same distance. So now I'm like moving my mouse across my whole desk just to turn this far. And eventually I can't move it at all if I keep pressing it. So that's what those keys do. F1 toggles the low persistence mode. So if I hit F1, my screen gets brighter from my perspective just a bit. And the motion blur and details comes back. So if I look at this window here, I look up and down, those grates start to blur together, and the leaves on the tree become very blurry when I move my head. Things like that. If I turn back on low persistence mode, gets a little dimmer, and all those effects go away. Everything remains sharp during head movement, just like it should. F2, actually, this is mislabeled in the documentation. Let me reset my settings. So F2 actually turns off, toggles positional tracking. So I'm going to hit F2, and if I looked at my camera right now, the light would be off on my camera. And as I lean left, lean right, it doesn't change my position or my image at all. It feels like the world is moving with me. It feels like the world's falling away, moving towards me. And now if I hit F2 and I wait for a few seconds, and now you saw it change and then it changed again. When it changed again, positional tracking was back and everything is good. It's actually interesting. A lot of people think positional tracking is just like so you can like lean around corners and things like that, but it actually has a noticeable effect even from a distance. So let's look through that window right over there in front of us. So that's quite a bit in front of us. That's several meters in front of us. But if I lean left or right, you can see how less and more of the stairs is being revealed through that window, even though I am quite far away from it. So it can have a noticeable effect even in distance. And that's about all the hotkeys I want to show you in this application. So yeah, it's a great demonstration of these particle effects. They're great. Particle effects are great as a demonstration of stereoscopy as well as something to encourage you to move your head around, to follow them around with. Especially, and now they're a good demonstration of low persistence because as you follow them with your head, there's less blur than there was before. So I think these are a really great thing to have here in Tuscany. The positional audio is a great thing to have since I feel like pretty much all VR applications should have positional audio in some capacity. And the fact that it has things that are close up and things that are far away, and it experiments with VR comfort mode for locomotion. It's a good demo to explore to kind of figure out what kind of essential VR features you might need for your own application. And that's it. I'm going to move on to Oculus World Demo, where there will be many more exciting hotkeys to try out. I will see you there.